Coming up on Network Africa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa in the U.S. for bilateral talks with President Joe Biden. Mali warns the West African bloc ECOWAS against involvement over detained Ivorian soldiers. Plus, Zimbabwe holds memorial service for Queen Elizabeth in Harare. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is in the U.S. for bilateral talks with his counterpart Joe Biden at the White House. The two leaders are expected to discuss trade, climate and energy as the U.S. is ramping up engagements with African countries. Another major topic up for discussion is Ukraine. South Africa has resisted calls to directly condemn Russia for the war, instead opposing the use of force generically. In March, President Ramaphosa blamed NATO's eastward expansion for regional instability and said the conflict should be solved through UN-mediated negotiations rather than Western-led sanctions. Well, South Africa was one of 17 African countries to abstain from the UN vote condemning Russia's assault. Now, it is the first time since 2014 that US and South African presidents are meeting at the White House. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia joins us now for more on President Ramaphosa's trip. Hello, Betty. Do give us more details, about the discussion to hold between both leaders.
Hello and thank you, Layo. Well, the visit of President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa to the United States covers the 15th to the 17th for this working visit of the South African president to his counterpart in the U.S., President Joe Biden. We all know that he arrived at the Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, and the meeting with his counterpart will be this Friday. And we expected to, of course, cover bilateral issues, regional, global, according to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. So global issues of mutual interest, areas of mutual interest include trade and investment, climate change, food security, energy, peace and security. But we know that what many people would like to be a fly on the wall for is what they will be talking about, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, for which they are on opposing sides at the United Nations. And that war is in its 7th month now. Part of President Cyril Ramaphosa's visit is not just with President Joe Biden. His working visit also covers a breakfast meeting with the U.S. Vice President, Kamala Harris. And I'm sure some of the same issues will come up, among other things. And the president of South Africa will also have meetings with congressional leaders and the veterans of the civil rights movement, who they believe helped in lobbying the American public against apartheid and still remain social or loyal, rather, to the cause of anti-racism in both the U.S. and South Africa. So shared history, shared trade relations, and shared interest in some areas, and respect in areas that they don't exactly agree with, respect of each other's positions. But they both consider each country or both countries as allies.
Well, speaking about, areas that both countries don't exactly agree with, Ukraine, and it's a peculiar issue for the two nations. The U.S. is really trying to get a South African position concerning Russia's invasion, but the president and his administration has taken a neutral stance. Could this perhaps affect relations between both countries?
We know that South Africa's relationship with the United States is quite strong, despite many areas where they're on different sides. South Africa is one of the sources of exports, or the U.S. is a destination for South African exports under the AGOA, which offers quota and duty-free exports to the country. AGOA is the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act. And you have so many South African countries, or companies rather, who are doing business in the US. That is growing now. Outward foreign direct investment for South African companies. I don't think South Africa's stance will change. They're still sticking to where they stand, which has been neutral to the point that they expect the same tough love, the same reaction to infringement on other countries' sovereignty. Every instance to be treated the same, not for particular countries and less and looking the other way for some particular countries. I believe that the end to this conflict should still be negotiation through the United Nations, and they expect the United Nations to be the platform that provides the solution to this and not taking sides. So, in essence, I do not see the relationship being affected. I think both countries respect their stance. South Africa is usually quite clear on where they stand on particular issues, and most of the time they stand by it, and they always refer to their history, where they're coming from, as part of what forms some of the decisions or the stance or that they take in some of these issues. I do not see their relationship being affected negatively. There is mutual respect, and the U.S. considers South Africa as a vital partner in some of the things that they're doing globally.
All right then, South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia. Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed has met with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin shortly after arriving in Washington, D.C. for talks on the fight against extremist group Al-Shabaab in the Horn of Africa nation. President Mohammed tweeted that the meeting at the Pentagon was also to discuss bilateral partnership and commitment to securing the future from international terrorism. According to Mr. Mohammed, the U.S. is a valuable partner in Somalia's national security. Well, this meeting is coming 4 months after President Joe Biden authorized the redeployment of U.S. troops to Somalia to counter al-Shabaab. Mali's military-led government is criticizing Côte d'Ivoire for asking the West African regional bloc ECOWAS to help secure the release of 46 Ivorian troops who have been detained in Bamako since July. In a strongly worded statement released, Mali says the soldiers' detention is purely a legal and bilateral matter and is warning ECOWAS not to get involved, adding that the Malian government would not yield to any blackmail or intimidation. Bamako's reaction comes a day after the Ivorian National Security Council's decision to refer the matter to ECOWAS so that it could organize an extraordinary meeting of heads of state on the crisis. But the Malian transitional authorities have said they are not concerned by this move. We'll move on to Zimbabwe now. The death of Queen Elizabeth has resurfaced memories, both fond and bitter, in the country. But in Harare, some people attended a church service to remember the monarch, while others said they didn't see the point.
Just a handful of mourners attended a memorial service for Queen Elizabeth in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. The death of the British monarch has stirred mixed feelings across Africa about the legacy of colonialism on the continent. At the Anglican Church in Harare, some congregants expressed fond memories for Zimbabwe's former colonial ruler. Queen Elizabeth visited Zimbabwe in 1947 with her parents, and again as queen in 1991, when she was hosted by former President Robert Mugabe. At the time of her first visit, Zimbabwe was a British-ruled colony with some autonomy, known as Southern Rhodesia, and with a white minority government. Outside the church, some Zimbabweans, like Ronward Manzungu, says colonialism is inextricably linked with Queen Elizabeth's 70-year reign.
I do not think it is necessary to celebrate her life. In the past, she led the colonial era. It is painful that they took our land while we were left to suffer. We will never forget. When she died, I was indifferent. She was old, so I guess it was now time.
Langton Musa says he doesn't see the need for a memorial.
I do not see the need to hold memorials for her. As a common Zimbabwean, it does not benefit me in any way.
The Southern African country left the Commonwealth network of mostly former territories of the British Empire in 2003. That was after Mr. Mugabe came under criticism over disputed elections and the seizures of land from white farmers. In 2008, Queen Elizabeth stripped Mr. Mugabe of the honorary knighthood she'd awarded him in 1994, citing the abuse of human rights and disregard for the democratic process.
The U.S. climate envoy John Kerry is cautioning against long-term gas projects in Africa as countries in the region, some of whom are hoping to tap their recent oil-gas discoveries, wrestle with the decision on how to power their development with clean energy. Well, Mr. Kerry was speaking on the sidelines of an African Environment Ministers Conference in Dakar, Senegal.
I know there's a lot of talk about gas. Gas could be used as a transition. And we're not saying no gas. What we're saying is that over the next few years, gas replaces coal or replaces oil. That's good. But after 2030, it's going to be important to be able to capture the emissions from gas too. That's something that can't be forgotten in this equation. I think it's more of a question right now of helping people to develop, but don't make the mistakes that we've already made in the past. Be as green as possible and help us move forward in a way that will not make the problem worse than it already is. In 10 years and paid for in 10 years? No, probably not. They're going to be 20 or 30 or 40 years. Some people I know want that long a project. And right now, that's not necessary. We don't need that to meet the energy future that we're looking at today. And that doesn't come from me. That comes from the International Energy Agency that says we need to build out solar and wind, available technology. It works. It's cheaper than gas and oil and coal, and it's cleaner, and we can move forward with that for the next 10 years. Then, you know, countries have the ability to go to 50, 60, 70, 80% of their energy provided by renewables. And so we don't have to rush to go backwards. We need to be very careful about exactly how much we're going to deploy, how it's going to be paid for, over what period of time, and how do you capture the emissions.
The United Nations says just 42% of refugee children are enrolled globally in pre-primary education, 68% in primary and 37% in secondary. And that's according to a new report by the UN Refugee Agency, which says there has been an increase to 6% in tertiary, but the numbers remain relatively low. Well, in the report called All Inclusive, the campaign for refugee data compiled from more than 40 countries highlights a disturbing disparity in the quality of education provided to refugees compared to that provided for non-refugees.
Just 42% of refugee children are enrolled globally in pre-primary, 68% in primary, which then goes down significantly to 37% in secondary. There has been an increase to 6% in tertiary, but the numbers are and remain relatively low. And with the increase in refugee and displaced populations, it is increasingly urgent that those gaps are addressed. We continue to call urgently for all refugee youth and children to have access to quality education right through the life cycle. And the focus here continues to be the inclusion in national education systems. So in the systems of the governments and the countries where they then reside once they become refugees. That does need relevant education financing mechanisms. There's been a huge amount of support put in from host governments, but actually meeting that support with financing is increasingly critical.
Still to come on the program. Welcome back to the program. This weekend, the United Nations will be hosting the Transforming Education Summit that's expected to take place at the UN headquarters in New York ahead of the General Assembly's general debate. Or briefing reporters on the upcoming summit, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed said piecemeal change is no longer an option, stressing that the summit offers a once-in-a-generation opportunity to radically transform education globally.
Piecemeal change, no longer an option. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to radically transform education, making it fit for purpose. The international community coming together to reverse the slide on the progress of SDG 4 and to begin to sow the seeds for a much deeper transformation of learning.
Welcome to our Africa Tech segment, where we'll be discussing the Web 3.0. Now, this has been described as the next evolution of the internet and the next iteration of Web 2.0. Also known as semantic web, Web 3.0 is an extension of the World Wide Web that uses standards set by the World Wide Web Consortium. Now, this is aimed at making the internet smarter by handling information with human-like intelligence using artificial intelligence systems. Well, joining us to discuss the adoption of Web 3.0 and its opportunities for Africa is tech analyst Victor Ekwalo. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Africa Tech.
Thank you for having me. Very much.
Well, for the benefits of those who might be hearing this for the first time, how would you describe Web 3.0?
Web3 is, like you rightly said, Web3 is a different imagination of the World Wide Web as we know it, the internet as we know it. So think of it as a new internet, right? That is different from the one we are used to. This new internet is going to be decentralized. Now, what does decentralization mean? A lot of the internet and internet we do today is very centralized, and this means that it is central to a group of companies. Big tech, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Like it's a group of companies that we trust to do what's right, with our operations on the internet. But with Web3, the idea to a very large extent is that these operations are decentralized and that nobody is directly in charge of what goes on. It's permissionless, and people are able to do things without restriction, without having to worry about, being stifled by anybody, basically.
Now, you said that this is aimed at, making the internet smarter, and it's handling information with human-like intelligence that will be using artificial intelligence system. Help us understand that further.
So Web3, the semantic Web3 is different from the blockchain Web3 that we're talking about today. They're two different things, actually. The original one was the semantic Web3 that you just described that's going to use AI to do all these fancy things. The Web3 that we're talking about today is very different, right? It's literally like I said, it's literally a reimagination of the internet that doesn't rely on corporations, that doesn't rely on anybody, basically based on the blockchain.
Now, in your first response, you were telling us about how it's a decentralized operation and no one is directly in charge. But wouldn't this have, an impact on cybersecurity if everyone is, free to be able to do what they can?
So definitely there are a lot of concerns, like even till recently, like there are hacks, every time. So cybersecurity is a major concern, especially for cybersecurity is a huge concern anyway, talk less of for a technology that is still very nascent and still in developmental phases, right? So yes, it's a major concern for Web3. But the goal is that like the more development that comes, more of these things will be taken into consideration. And sometimes, to a very large extent, most of the lessons will be learned the hard way. Recently, there was a crypto hack. There was a hack, that happened, and people lost a lot of money, lost a lot of crypto. And this happens every once in a while, So as these things happen, security will be tightened. And Web3 is still a very newish concept. So it's not going to be perfect in terms of security.
All right, then, Victor, a Qualotech analyst, thank you for speaking to us today.
Thank you very much.
A 25-year-old Ugandan climate activist, Vanessa Nacate, has been appointed as the newest UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. This affirms her collaboration with the organization and is recognizing her outstanding global advocacy for climate justice for current and future generations.
I take this appointment not as a testament to something I have done, but as something that we have done, as a movement of young people. Yes, this appointment opens doors to halls of power, but more importantly, it expands the opportunities I have to travel to meet children and families most affected by the climate crisis and to amplify their stories on stages like this one. The ongoing emergency in the Horn of Africa is depriving children of a meal, of safe water, of access to life-saving health services. It is keeping them from classrooms and forcing their families to move. Governments and industry must listen to the science and follow the data, which is getting harder to ignore every day. We must reduce emissions, redefine development, generate real solutions for survival, and think innovatively about how we finance them. We must do this at speed and scale for children everywhere.
While young African people continue to make the continent proud, we move to Dubai, UAE, where 28-year-old Senegalese star Boubou Niang, popular as the social media sensation Boubou Design, is extending the reach of his paint brushes to the Middle East with a number of artworks that's been created in tribute to the country.
Dubai-based violinist Marianne creates a melodious tune as viral Instagram sensation Boubou works his magic at his second ever live painting event in Dubai. With some paint, a palette and a bunch of roses, the Senegalese artist gets to work as a room full of African businessmen, Emirati royalty, and others anticipates the finished work. In no time, he flips the palette upside down in his usual style to reveal the artwork, to the delight of the gathering. The event, put together by organizers of the biggest African festival in the region, gives residents of Dubai an opportunity to experience his talent up close.
Boubou is one of the artists that I really enjoy watching because he's doing a live painting. And for me, this is not just looking at the painting, it's seeing it being alive. So I'm really excited. I was really honored to be there when he was doing this first one in Dubai, and I'm extremely honored that he's part of this All Africa Festival.
I saw him for the first time last year at the All Africa Festival, and experiencing it in a more intimate setting, even more surreal. And I had the opportunity to speak to him, and he's so humble, so sweet, and just seeing him kind of doing what he does, and the results in the end, it's like a journey. So I've been loving it.
The private gathering in his honor also marks his official introduction to Emirati royalty ahead of the 2022 edition of the All Africa Festival.
Well, this festival it's a great honor for Boubou to be invited over here and to meet the African diaspora. As Bourbon's spirit is like, people used to call Africa is for tomorrow, for Bubu, Africa is today. It's happening right now, and it's happening in Dubai. And we're on board, 100%.
So what's going to happen to this painting now?
Well, I mean, as Boo said, they're open for offers. So I guess people can make offers for them, and then we see what happens.
Part of the proceeds from the sale of the painting will be donated to the All Africa Festival in Dubai. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadegoke for Channels Television.
And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a great weekend.